Fist of the North Star for Game Boy is a beat-em-up title developed by Shui System and published by Sega in 1991. It is based on the manga and anime series of the same name created by Buronson and Tetsuo Hara. The game features a one-on-one combat system that, while simple, has been criticized for its lack of depth. Combos and special moves are limited and don't offer much strategic variety. This can make combat repetitive and uninspiring. The AI of the opponents is considered rather basic. Opponents tend to follow predictable patterns, which can make fights less challenging and easier to overcome with a simple strategy. Some characters may be unbalanced compared to others, creating situations where certain characters are significantly stronger or weaker than others. This can lead to frustration and a lack of fairness in battles. The game uses a resolution of 160 by 144 pixels and a color palette limited to 4 simultaneous tones per screen. This limits the amount of detail that can be displayed, resulting in characters and environments that are rather plain and sometimes indistinguishable. Although the character designs are inspired by the manga and anime, the representations are rather stylized and lack detail compared to other versions. The animations are minimal and not very fluid. Character movements are often stiff, and transitions between different actions can feel unnatural. The animations of the special moves, while trying to capture the impact of Hokuto Shinken techniques, are rather basic and not particularly impressive. The backgrounds are static and not very variable. Although they attempt to represent settings from the Fist of the North Star universe, they are often monotonous and repetitive. The lack of visual variety in the levels can contribute to a boring gaming experience. The controls have been criticized for their responsiveness and accuracy. Responses to controls may seem slow or imprecise, which can negatively affect the fluidity of gameplay. The key combinations required to perform special moves can be difficult to master, further aggravating the gaming experience. The button layout can be unergonomic, with keys not always reacting as expected. This can make it difficult to execute complex moves and can affect the player's ability to perform combos and special techniques reliably. The chiptune soundtrack, while trying to evoke the atmosphere of the manga and anime, is often judged as monotonous and repetitive. The Game Boy's limited sound capacity doesn't allow for a lot of musical variety, and the tracks tend to get boring after a while. The sound effects are simple and not particularly distinctive. The effects of blows and special moves are not very impactful and can be uninvolving. The game length is relatively short, with a limited number of levels and characters. This can reduce replayability, especially if the gameplay fails to maintain the player's interest. The difficulty of the game is generally low, and the lack of a real increasing difficulty curve can lead to an unchallenging gaming experience. The repetitiveness of combat and lack of variety can contribute to a feeling of boredom and a lack of meaningful progress.
Imagine being dropped into a miniature post-apocalyptic world, but don't expect graphical rendering that truly captures the raw essence of the manga and anime. Fist of the North Star for Game Boy is a clumsy attempt to reproduce the Kenshiro universe, but the rudimentary graphics and poor animation make the experience very far from the original epic. The game presents itself as a fighting game, but don't expect an immersive sensory journey. Your opponents, animated in an extremely basic way, seem more like caricatures than real threats. The combos and special moves, rather than expressing martial mastery, appear as simple and uninspired expressions of the console's limited capacity. The soundtrack is bland and merely creates a weak imitation of the manga's atmosphere. The sound effects, which should evoke chaos and intensity, are banal and often annoying. Each defeated enemy does nothing but remind you of how shallow the plot is and how much the game lacks real challenge and progression. In Fist of the North Star, Pixel art is not an inspired stylistic choice but a clear limitation of the technology of the time. Every move and level feels like repetitions of a boring, monotonous pattern, rather than true tests of your strength and courage. Prepare yourself for a series of repetitive and unrewarding fights in an apocalypse that offers neither satisfaction nor real challenges.
In summary, Fist of the North Star for the Game Boy has a number of technical and design limitations that have negatively affected its reception. The graphics, gameplay, and audio failed to meet expectations, resulting in a gaming experience that can be considered inferior to other titles of the time.